spook easily stung.
Have you ever explored the depths of fear? Have you ever wondered what depravity dwells within the imagination of a storyteller that prompts them to exhume horrors untold and expose those horrors to unsuspecting audiences? Some are repulsed, and some are shaken. However, there are those who are invigorated. So to those demented souls, we invite you to journey inward into the dark bowels of human imagination. Press play, and you will discover what's in the podcast.
And welcome to this edition of What's in the Podcast. And for today's edition, we pontificate on the public perception of horror. Horror has been touted as being violent, disgusting, depraved, socially and morally reprehensible. And we say, and? But there is one thing that horror has also been called, which has us horror fans going bullshit. It has been called unimaginative. Yes, that is utter crap, because if there's anything horror has done consistently over its entire history, it has blazed a trail and has consistently been innovative and has constantly push the boundaries on what people think is possible. So much so, in fact, that is a wealth of horror films that go so far off the beaten track of what people are used to that people go, "What the fresh fuck?" And to that, there is a section of horror which I've heard has been called this, but it's not a recognized term. But today I feel obliged to finally refine, define, and categorize what we mean when we call certain types of horror films Gonzo horror. And the definition, as I'd like to lay it down, as horror that throws out logic and realism for the sake of embracing the odd and the eccentric. And if there's anyone who I feel that we can explore this with, it is my very, very dear friend from my YouTube days, who is one of the most entertaining YouTubers I've run across, who is the proprietor, the owner, and the MC of Trivial Theater, or as many of her friends and people who love her call her simply Triv. So welcome to the show, Triv.
Thank you so much. I'd also like to say that I'm the chief bottle washer, but I am looking to hire someone for that position if there's interest.
Okay, bottle washer. Okay, so it's strictly glass, no plastics.
You know what? It's hard to find plastic in the 2D realm, weirdly. So it's kind of a yeah.
Well, I would imagine it's hard to differentiate between what's glass and what's plastic when you're operating on cartoon logic, I suppose. Yeah. With it. So yeah, they both look well, I suppose 2D version of translucent is like, white and like little lines simulating glistening effect. So absolutely. I don't know what that's a testament to our Gonzo sensibilities that we're spending here pontificating on cartoon bottles.
Well, the glass holds up in 2D space, plastic just goes. So,
So this is your first time on What's in the Podcast, and with every first timer on the show, we are obligated to inquire about your origin story. So what got you into horror?
Well, first off, I'm proud to break my podcast cherry being here. So thank you so much for. Well, I mean, with you, with the.
With me. Okay, yeah. I was about to say, because I've heard you on podcasts before.
No, sorry, I wasn't clear. But so I kind of started on, I guess, the classics. When I was a kid, I'd watch AMC, the channel, and you'd see the like the 50s and 60s B horror movies and classic Universal cinema and all that kind of stuff. We got into MST3K and found out the horrors of low budget movies and the creeping terror and monsters a go-go.
The crawling hand, the giant spider invasion.
Oh yeah. Packers win the Super Bowl.
Packers won the Super Bowl.
From there, from there, it was Oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was honestly just going to keep on making MST3K references, so it might be best if we just keep moving.
I mean, I could go on with that for a couple of hours, but that's not why we're here. We're here to talk the origins of someone putting a man in space and making him watch bad movies.
Oh yeah.
So it kind of started with that, and from there it just kind of grew. When I started my YouTube channel, I kind of had it in my head that I just wanted to do whatever came to mind that was interesting, low budget, obscure, those kinds of movies. And a lot of what I came up with was horror based. So that really made me expand out of what I had known about horror to that point. I ran into a lot of amazing people like John who just got me into so much of that stuff. And I am incredibly grateful because my education has been fantastic and interesting because of you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, and honestly, ever since we became friends, it's just been such a blast, like doing a big old exchange between each other of just all the crazy, wacky, uh, random stuff between each other. And in our collaborations, we've done actually some that fall underneath the heading of what we're going to discuss today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so for everyone concerned, when we talk about Gonzo horror, and everyone knows an example, and there are those horror films where when you watch it, the one of the there's always the questions, of course, the classic "what the fuck" is one, or variations thereupon. I guarantee someone's inquiring about what substances the creative were on when they conceived a particular title. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people would even go to the extreme and say, this is making me feel things I don't want to feel. So with that in mind, there are different variations of Gonzo horror that we have thought about, and we have been able to whittle it down into three categories. One is I'm uncomfortable. These are the times where the horror movie goes to such a crazy extreme, and deliberately so, specifically for the sake of making us feel in some way like uncomfortable. Obviously, uncomfortable is the word, but it would where you feel like you're squirming in your seat and you're just like, this is not obviously when you press play, not what you signed up for, but here you are anyway. The second one we've set up is, wait, what? That is the side of Gonzo horror where the movie starts off one way and you're settled and you think it's going to be like this all the way through, but then at some point of the movie it pulls the rug out from under you and ends up becoming something so batshit insane it winds up changing the shape of the movie completely. And then, of course, which conveniently leads us to the big one, the one that most of our examples are going to fall under, don't give a fuck.
Yes.
Where it's very blatantly clear that everyone involved with the movie didn't give a fuck. So
in the best way possible.
In the best way possible. So to begin, I think the best way we should go through this is take turns throwing examples into the mix and then just discuss which of these three categories each one falls under. So since you are our guest, let's go ahead and hit us with an example you'd like to bring up.
Well, before we got on, we were kind of discussing some of this stuff, and I think you have to go back to the origin of everything has an origin, whether it's, classic horror or whatever it might be. And in looking up stuff, arsenic and old lace had come up as an example.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And not only that, it's the earliest example. And people wouldn't even think of that as an example of Gonzo horror, but this sucked, and understandable. It came out in 1941. Well, the original play came out in 41, and of all people, Frank Capra made the film version. And for those who do not know, and frankly, I feel should, Arsenic and Old Lace was considered to be the very first dark comedy about a guy who, right when he gets married and before he heads off on his honeymoon, decides to visit his aunties, and through just a matter of sheer inconvenient timing, discovers that his aunties and practically his entire family are serial killers. His aunties have been taking in drifters, killing them with arsenic, and having their I believe their son, who has delusions that he's Teddy Roosevelt, bury them in the cellar. Meanwhile, their serial killer nephew shows up, needing a safe house to do plastic surgery
Which in
to
itself,
conceal his face.
and he initially was played by Boris Karloff, and so it was played by, I think, Paul Massey. No, Raymond Massey.
Well, I know Peter Lorre, I think, is in the film too.
Yes, he plays Dr. Einstein, but the chief murder guy was played by Boris Karloff in the play, and then he was brought into they didn't bring him into the movie, but they had, I think it was Raymond Massey. But anyway, they keep making jokes about the fact that he looks like that guy, and they don't really say who that guy is until the end, and then there's a big scuffle and everybody ends up knocked out while Cary Grant sits back massively confused by everything.
So that is definitely the very first prime example of Gonzo Horror, and a wonderful example too. I feel like that one definitely deserves to be talked about a heck of a lot more than it has been nowadays. But what would we categorize that under?
I would say that it starts one way and then it moves into something else.
So that would be, wait, what?
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I'm I'm a firm believer in that as well. And it kind of makes me sad. Yeah, it's one of those ones that when you tell people about it, you don't want to give them the full synopsis, but simultaneously that's the thing that sells people on it. So it's like it's a catch-22. And just the fact that it's from Frank Capra, the guy who did Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and It's a Wonderful Life.
Well, and the nice thing about that is too, any of these directors, they all started someplace, and just because they went to like the feel good, warm, fuzzy type movies doesn't mean that that's all they did. I mean, look at Bob Clark. He did,
Oh yeah.
A Christmas Story, and then he did Black Christmas, and what was the other one that he did that was very
well? Yeah, he kicked off with horror. He did Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, and then Black Christmas in '74. So he did like one of the great holiday horror films, but then I think a little like 10 years down the line, he ended up making one of the most nauseatingly repeated Christmas movies with A Christmas Story. So, yeah. I mean, it just goes to show that sometimes directors just love to, and of course he did like one of the quintessential pervert comedies, Porky's.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So sometimes a director just surprises you just by saying, you know what, I'm in the mood to kill a bunch of co-eds.
You know what? Who doesn't?
And not tell anyone. And well, we'll have to stop recording before we get deeper in. No. We'll have to stop before we get deeper into that conversation. But I mean, one for me that I think is just Gonzo in general, and it's one that is so woefully underseen just by the fact that it's so tied up in legal issues that we don't even have a Blu-ray of it. It would be Alex Winter's Freaked.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
Yeah.
And I don't think one that people like. I learned about it from collabing with one of my fellow YouTubers, and it was life-changing. And I know we're talking straight up like what it does, but even just the behind the scenes, like all of the production work that went into that was so amazing.
Exactly. And with great creature effects by Screaming Mad George, and a lot of it you could tell was very clearly inspired by like Ratfink art, or definitely, or the kind of stuff like that you'd see like I would definitely say like in 90s skateboarding culture. Like it's like that kind of artwork brought to life in this movie. And the jokes just fly furiously in that sucker. And in a movie, I mean, when you got Keanu Reeves as a Che Guevara-esque dog boy and Mr. T as a bearded woman.
Yes.
That's just I can't even keep up with that movie, just even to try to bring it up. But that's just one where it's a visual feast. There's so much going on in that damn movie just with sheer imagination, and only in a movie and you help me. I can't even
the Jamaican eyeball guys. I mean, that this movie is the most normal that Randy Quaid has ever been.
Kinda, yeah. Kind of, with at least until Even
I
Randy
mean,
Quaid's throwing me off.
no, I don't blame you. I mean, pants that striped, that would throw off anybody. But I mean, you look at it, and from moment one, I mean, there's a guy on the plane that comes up, and he's got like his dick is like like a hand. It's like,
Yeah,
why is his dick a hand? Or
yeah.
there's go ahead.
And one of the heroic characters is this little dweeby kid who keeps getting horrifically physically abused in so many ways, and that adorable kid just keeps bouncing back with that scene, that with that great aw gee willikers attitude. I mean, there's a whole montage of the kid getting launched out of glass doors like multiple times
Hey, when
until
we were kids, we went through glass doors and we didn't complain about it.
oh yeah, no, a lot of times I got launched out of a glass door, and then my mom said, "Here's your lunch."
At least you got lunch. I was given a Tootsie Roll and a saltine cracker. I was even gonna just add like Bobcat Goldthwait's character is like a hand, like it's a hand puppet with a like a it's like
Yeah.
a sock puppet. And like his
Yeah.
death is in its own way really weirdly gruesome. Like it's like you pull it off and everybody's like, "Oh God, the hand!"
We even get the origin story of I think it was a hammer, and we find out that previously it was a wrench in this thing. So with all the things that we're describing, everyone who has not seen this film, I'm pretty sure, are going, "What? These things just should not go together in this movie." And I think that's the brilliance of it, and I think that's why I think we could safely categorize that. I would even say it's one of the quintessential examples of don't give a fuck.
Oh yeah, without doubt. I mean, it's like, I guess it's like anything. You think like chocolate and bacon shouldn't go together, but
Oh yeah,
they go
they
together
do.
like right by tradition. You know, one is sweet, one is savory. They're not supposed to go together. That how can that work? And yet it's become one of those staples of like mid 2000s culture.
And I would even say by extension, it's that kind of spirit that imbued movies like the recent Destroy All Neighbors that came out this year. So that kind of really kind of, so I'm sorry, I'm pulling out another example, but I
No,
kind of feel
that's
these two
okay.
kind of go, but these two kind of go hand in hand, you know, because they have the same spirit, they have the same maniacal energy, and for extra measure, Alex Winter is in both of them.
Oh
So
yeah. And don't you
yeah, so
think
that's a
too,
big.
it's that energy that makes a Gonzo horror movie what it is in a lot of cases?
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, I think a lot of it may be when because like when you think cartoons, especially like the Tex Avery or even like Ren and Stimpy, those cartoons have a specific energy and which and a lot and an electricity that is you think is only achievable in animation. So when you make a movie that is able to match that energy, that is something to be admired. And I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
the miracle of stuff. So movies like Freaked and Destroy All Neighbors really kind of fit underneath that heading. So yeah, I
Oh
think you got
yeah.
a really good point there.
Well, and it's a hard, it's like getting that right balance on a horror comedy, which isn't what we're talking about here, obviously, but you have to match that, like you said, it's that balance. If you go too
Yeah.
far into cartoony, you're gonna lose what makes it horror and vice versa.
Well, I would even argue that a movie like Freaked is a comedy through and through. It's just we consider it horror just because there's a lot of horrific elements thrown into it.
True.
It's the fact that we've got like all these creatures, all these, you know, I mean, one could even say it's like uh Todd Browning's Freaks just jacked up on like
Oh
an
yeah.
entire key of cocaine. Uh
And that's before coffee.
and maybe even a little bit of ecstasy, you know, who knows? But I think we just consider it that just because there's so much grotesque imagery in the film, but because it's presented in the veneer of a comedy, uh, you know, we're able to handle it. I think that's how it became such a beloved cult film because it was assaulting us with so much whacked out shit we never thought we'd ever see, and done with this outrageous tongue in cheek tone that just never that I don't think anyone ever expected before. But we safely slot it as horror just because it still involves a lot of really wild creature effects and the kind of stuff that we commonly associate with um freak shows. I would even say, yeah, I mean, kind of in the same camp as say Basket Case 2 and 3
Yeah,
in that regard. So
definitely the
yeah,
case. I
yeah.
like it.
All right. So next one for you. Your turn.
I'm gonna go Dead Alive.
Oh, that kind of falls into the same.
Hey,
Oh, yeah.
I
I'm
did
sorry. My yeah. I gotta know what was your first reaction when you saw this sucker? Well, actually, what motivated you to watch this first,
well,
or
I
what
had
you first did?
oh, so I had seen Bad Taste and Meet the Feebles, and you kind of got to complete the trilogy of Peter Jackson's like really early stuff. So
Yeah.
that was kind of what drove me to want to watch it. And I watched it and then I introduced it to a friend of mine that sort of does low budget movies, but not a lot. And
Yeah.
she's got a skittish stomach, so it's like
Okay, so I gotta know, did you show them the original Brain Dead cut, or did you show them the basic American cut?
no, it was the full
Oh,
blown.
very few movies can make me retch, and the whole part where his mother eats her own ear
Yeah.
made me retch. Well, that and when her pussy blister oozes out into another guy's custard and he's eating it, I'm
Oh.
like,
I
yeah,
just
that
assumed that
shit.
was part of British cuisine to, pop a zit and pop it into somebody's custard.
Maybe, but it's New Zealand.
That's well, but they were taking a very British approach, That's it's all about the British approach, you know, fish and
Oh
chips and
yeah.
all that.
I think my favorite thing about that, the whole aspect, is that that movie got a surge in popularity after Peter Jackson exploded with Lord of the Rings. And I know so many people who were completely disillusioned by Dead Alive. I mean, sure, I suppose if you watch like just Heavenly Creatures or something, you're okay. Hell, even if you watch The Frighteners, you're like, okay, that kind of makes sense. You show them Dead or Alive, or you show them Dead Alive slash Brain Dead or Bad Taste or Meet the Feebles. You're gonna see people's brains melt out of their ears because
But the thing is you can look at, and I guess again I'm kind of taking it more towards the technical side. Every single one of those movies was done with very small budgets, very limited crew. I mean, the amount of creativity and the amount of like the way that practical effects were pulled off, the way that shots were done, the way that sound was implemented, everything about those movies is what we would consider to be the very best of something that didn't have a Hollywood level budget, you know?
yeah. And there's aspects of that movie, especially with Dead Alive, I was really impressed with on the scale. Just Lionel's final showdown with his mother when she kind of grows to become this giant like zombie monstrosity.
With like the world's
I'm a
largest tits.
Yeah, oh, the world's largest tits, and actually swallows Lionel back up into her womb. I mean, that whole sequence, it's astonishing. I mean, first off, it's crazy ambitious just in terms of special effects, but it just
Oh yeah.
blows my mind that they pulled it off and it works
Oh
so
yeah.
damn well. So actually, here's the other Gonzo. I think we can agree. Don't give a fuck on this one.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Not even a question.
The thing about this one that also works is that on paper, in the beginning, this seems like it's just going to be a zombie film, and we've seen zombie films. Most of them are very self-serious. Some of them are, very down, and they usually tend to be pretty down to earth. The Dead Alive is one of those movies that right out of the gate tells you this is not going to be the kind of stuff Romero trots out.
No, definitely
This
not.
is,
And I think for the 90s too, Romero was kind of a lot of the end all be all of what the zombie genre was at that point.
oh yeah,
Like, he was the guy that you went to and nothing on Romero. His stuff is, all
oh
across the
yeah,
board. Fantastic. He's taken it in so many different directions, but this was something I think like every other thing that, whether you're talking the puppet genre with Meet the Feebles or like kind of alien genre with Bad Taste, he looked at what was out there and he said, okay, I don't want this to be that. I want this to be my own crazy ass thing.
yeah.
And like that final when we were watching it, like everything had, like he's mowing the lawn earlier on, and that comes back,
Mm-hmm.
massively. Like the little gnome that's out front,
Yeah.
gets used as a weapon, and then it's like pounded into somebody's esophagus, like all of the stuff it's there, it has a purpose, it's going to be used.
Yeah, and even stuff that just seems like there's a sublime sense. I'd love to pick his brain about it, but I would love to think that Peter Jackson just said, I've never seen this before. I want to see it done. Well, why is it in here? I just want it in there.
Right.
So it's like, why can't a priest, like we always see defenseless, benign priests. How about we have one who's a martial arts master?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Or I've never seen some, I've always been terrified of pushing lawnmowers and what happens when the blade, let's see that get used as a weapon. Or actually, another one joke in there, which I loved, is like, sure, zombies, bite you, but what happens if the zombie actually doesn't have teeth and is just using dentures?
Oh, I love that. It was so good.
It was such a great fake out, and I was like, oh no, his girlfriend just got bit, and then oh, okay, she's fine, because it was just dentures. I love that bit so much,
And the zombie baby, like the fact that you've got like the
yeah,
nurse and the priest like getting it on, and then oh well, hey, there's a zombie baby, and it looks less creepy than Esme from the Twilight series.
God, freaking Red Esme. That was the Michael Keaton Jack Frost snowman of babies.
Oh God.
Yeah.
But in
Oh
that realm
man.
of just like weird stuff you don't see, like when all of the internal organs get taken out and like the one set of them keeps coming after Lionel and it's like pulling itself
Yeah.
along with it's either like a lung or a liver, and
That's
it's
like
got
yeah.
its own personality.
It's like all of a sudden we're into mystics in Bali.
Yeah.
Just what the fresh hell? So
Exactly.
well, and I think we kind of hit something here. I think a lot of times we veer into Gonzo horror specifically because it's the one type of horror that allows us to let our imaginations run wild and kind of see the stuff that we want to see, regardless of what sense it makes.
Oh yeah, I would agree with
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I would even say that kind of fuels one of my favorite filmmakers, Frank Henenlotter. I mean, he just wants to make the movies his way. He doesn't care if anyone sees them, but he's like, I want to see a movie about a guy who schleps around his deformed brother in a wicker basket. You know,
I want to see a blue
but
guy that controls my every thought by shooting good happy field time drugs into my brain.
and let's make him look like a blue cock and have the voice of John Zachary.
Oh
So
baby.
yeah, yeah. All right. But alternatively though, yeah, I mean a lot of that is designed to kind of inject a movie with kind of maniacal energy. But alternatively, there is the kind of gonzo horror that is designed specifically to, as we said before, to kind of put people in a state of unrest, kind of make them feel like they could be like assaulted at any moment with something they're not prepared for. And I think the one who's the patron saint of that, like the one who really kind of created that idea, is David Cronenberg.
Oh, 100%.
He's the person who, well, and I love this. Guillermo del Toro he described his work in the sense of we as people are not comfortable in our own bodies, and Cronenberg is the kind of filmmaker who really brings out the horror of what happens when our bodies betray us, and it ends up taking over a part of ourselves that ends up uh, kind of forcing us to become this monster in a way. So a lot of his films really kind of fell underneath this heading. So I think a great example for this would easily be, especially his early stuff, Shivers and Rabid, especially Rabid.
Oh God,
Have you?
Rabbit is amazing. So
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Do you want to give the synopsis on Rabid?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
there's a couple that's in a car accident. They're taken to basically like a plastic surgery clinic, would you call it?
Yeah,
The guy is easily treated, but the woman has severe burns. So they try this new technique that's been untested, basically, to regrow this skin at a rapid pace. As you would expect from a horror movie, things go awry. She turns into basically like she's herself, and then all of a sudden she decides to get all horny, starts to make out with somebody, and then she basically stings the next person and turns him into a rabies infueled zombie type person, like
yeah.
rage virus kind of thing.
The movie on its own is just freaking nuts. I mean, just the idea, and even the most other movies would have that thing that she bites people with, like in her mouth or something like that, or even just like in her fingernails. No, Cronenberg puts it under her armpit.
Yep. And I imagine
Yeah.
maybe lymphatic system, there could have been some influence there, possibly. And not that it
Mhm.
matters, but um,
And it seems like it's a Gonzo concept just for the sake of making people uncomfortable just with the idea of intimacy causing this thing. But there always seems, when it comes to Cronenberg, it always seems to have some kind of method or madness. It just is an idea that on a visual level is so outrageous and so crazy that people are just not ready to handle that kind of whacked out imagination. And even and because of that, people don't know where this movie's going to go in relation to where they were at the start of it.
oh, agreed.
So,
And you truly don't like, because most movies of that era, you would have some kind of resolution that even if it's not a positive, happily ever after, you would get something that would be resembling, the city suffered, but they got taken care of things and everything was fine. But you really don't
hmm,
have that resolution. It's still left open ended as to, who got away. Who did they miss? Like any great pandemic, really.
yeah. And that's admittedly, I watched this sucker right in the midst of quarantine. So here's me going, this was a good choice. This is a good choice.
Well,
And
it gives you options. You don't necessarily have to go the traditional pandemic route there. You could have a different
yeah,
kind of rabid, infectious thing.
yeah, actually, and even Shivers is kind of similar in that regard too. Only that one takes the form of worm-like a worm-like parasite that invades people. And the weird thing about that one is that it kind of turns them into a, I want to say they're just really kind of, I guess, sex crazed is a good way to describe it, but it's the idea. I Some people have said that it's Cronenberg's like films kind of like to play up like the paranoia people have about the sexual liberation
That's true.
movement, and how like the main character is like this like a repressed dude who's like kind of terrified of that. And at the end of the movie, like the entire tower block becomes like crazed with people who have been, and they're all like, oh god, yeah. And he's like freaking out by that idea. So both these examples are kind of like Gonzo movies that kind of harness the idea to sell a metaphor kind of
Oh
thing,
yeah.
but it's so crazy that it makes people, and it's so outrageous that people have guaranteed never seen something like that it makes them feel uncomfortable. I mean, I suppose, I don't know if you'd agree with me on this, but I suppose The Brood would even fall underneath this heading as well.
I could see that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it takes a different take on it, but it certainly falls underneath that umbrella.
yeah, and then it kind of, I mean, yeah, it even starts off. That's one that just kind of gradually plays its hand all the way up until Samantha Egger starts licking off a fetus.
I mean, I thought that was just a Tuesday night activity. Maybe I'm just weird.
Oh no, no! I mean, this is anything. Hey, this is Canadian. Anything can happen up there.
Very true. I would also say, like, the way that Rabbit and Shivers play out, they kind of do, they're kind of from that era, where you had like those like ABC, afternoon movies and things like that, like kind of those PSA based movies. They kind of start that way,
Mhm.
like, here's a thing that happened, and then it just goes off the rails and becomes crazy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that they do it just specifically to gauge some kind of reaction from people, and just
Oh
kind
yeah.
of, a lot of times it really is the filmmaker just going, oh man, this is gonna fuck with them so hard, I gotta see what they're doing. And I would love to know if Cronenberg, like especially in his early days, is just like sitting there looking at people going, I don't know. He always seems very stoic, so I don't know if he truly would be like that. But I'm wondering if there's a little devil inside him,
Oh, I'd
like
imagine.
having a little bit of Schadenfreude at the expense of his unsuspecting audiences. I hope so.
Well, and it's such a, well, I guess not so much now, but before the pandemic, you would have, well, in a little bit sense, but they'd have like audience reactions to so many different movies, like, oh, this movie shocked a crowd, and then you see people reacting like in such a way to whatever movie, and those,
Yeah.
I, I would imagine that they're not just, I mean, obviously they're not just putting them in there to just to be like, oh, look at what we did. They're gonna be like, yeah, can you survive this? Because we don't think you can survive this.
Yeah, probably not. That's a discussion for another day of how one would survive a particular scenario. But I definitely know some of these Gonzo scenarios. I think I would probably do pretty damn well in. I suppose we could lead into this other one, but then a lot of times a movie will prime you into being in a particular situation, but then all of a sudden pull the rug out from under you. So, do you
Oh
have
yeah.
any examples of our wait what category?
I would start with something like, say, demons. Would that be a good example of that?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, there's that one. That's actually a really one that has kind of a little bit of an overlap because, yeah, it does. It does start like it seems like it's going to be like people trapped in a movie theater, like or a siege concept. That's one where it plays with the idea of okay, we think it's going to be this kind of film all the way through, but then it escalates and then it builds and then just gets even more and more unhinged as it goes on. I mean, I will say, yeah, I mean, Demons One especially is a movie that is not the movie it was when it started, because by the end of it, you've got a guy on a motorcycle slicing off demon heads, and then a helicopter that we have no idea where this helicopter came from comes in from the ceiling, and
It's trying to
what
pull a
per
Miss Saigon.
yeah, yeah, it's yeah, Miss Saigon as produced by the people behind Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark.
Only with less injuries.
Yeah, considerably less injuries
But just as much spandex.
and not as much pretension. Oh
Oh
god.
man.
Yeah. Oh, that was
R.I.P.
really Julie Taymor, fucking Arachne, really? What
Yes.
the hell? What the hell?
Still
Um,
better than Madame Web.
I haven't seen it yet, and I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt, but nah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not gonna throw stones.
No,
But
that's okay.
that's one I think has some nice overlap between Don't Give a Fuck to Wait, actually starting with Wait What, and then turns into Don't Give a Fuck by the very end. I would definitely say Demons 2 goes I think because Demons 2 is in very much in the same spirit and in many ways can be considered to be the same movie as Demons 1. I think that one goes harder into Don't Give a Fuck territory, but Demons
Yeah.
1 is one that makes you think it's going to be a specific type of demon horror film, but then as it just becomes more insane, leans into Don't Give a Fuck territory.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Although, yeah, that's definitely the case. I was going to bring up the pregnant lady, but that really puts it into don't give a fuck territory from Demons too.
Yeah. Actually, oh, there's a little part of me about Demons 2 that makes me wish that it had gone for it, but simultaneously it is a much more optimistic ending than Demons 1. But there was a little part of me hoping that after she gave birth to that baby, that baby was a demon too.
I was expecting that. I'm not going to lie, but I
Yeah.
suppose at that point you're already at the end of the movie, and it's like I guess you like because was it yeah it was Demons One that kind of left it off as this thing is happening, and it kind of without building into a sequel kind of built into a sequel.
Yeah. Well, it hinted at the idea that this evil's already spreading like all over the place. I mean, honestly, I was actually shocked when I watched Demons 2, and in the beginning of the movie, it seems like everything's fine. And I'm like, wait a minute. I would have thought this would have just been more craziness, but I don't know. That one kind of has overlap, but I would say if there's a movie that came out in recent years and it was my favorite of 2021, that is the ultimate embodiment of the wait what category. And it's one that I kind of love how divisive it is, and it's still being debated to this very day. But to me, Malignant is a
Oh yeah.
perfect representation of the wait what category. So, yeah, and this was the rare time on your channel that you actually spotlighted this movie. I mean, you
Oh
don't
yeah.
usually do new movies, but that movie was only out for a couple of weeks. And what motivated you to show that one?
Oh, well, I definitely had when I go to see movies and they kind of fall into the category that fits, I guess, what I do at the theater. I try to bring light to it just because it is something that is a modern example of what my channel kind of consists of. And I was so taken aback by it because I did not expect what happened to happen. I
Yeah.
had such fun with it. I had to talk about it.
And incidentally, from this point on, we will get into spoilers. So if you have not seen Malignant yet, I do know it's still streaming on Max. Definitely stop and go see it, because we are going to get into spoilers from this point on,
Absolutely.
just to warn everybody. Yeah. For I myself, I was just, bent to see anything new that just came out. I think the thing that motivated me to see it was Brad Jones' uh description of it, or his review of it. The second he said that it was one part giallo, but then when he said that there's a little bit of Henenlotter in it,
Mm.
that immediately rang a bell in my brain, going, wait a minute, what do you mean Henenlotter? Because when you watch the trailer for Malignant, there is nothing in that movie that even remotely hints at anything. I mean, the tone of the movie seems very serious, and a lot of the imagery seems very Conjuring-esque. It
Yep.
seems like it's a different kind of James Wan movie. So that intrigued me. And then when I watched it on Max, uh I throughout the entire movie, I'm like, okay, I'm really digging this. And oh my God, Gabriel's a badass. And oh wow, the camera work is incredible in this movie. I mean, it's
Hmm.
very giallo. My brain was on giallo. I was
Yeah.
like, this is totally a giallo inspired movie, even down to the leather gloves. So I was like, this is pure giallo, until that goddamn twist happens. And there was in my brain, where's the Henenlotter? Where's the Henenlotter moment? And then we get to that damn reveal that Gabriel was on her back. And immediately I was like, there's the Henenlotter right there. And the movie took such a brilliant turn. And I was already like, pro this movie, but that moment immediately screamed to me like, movie, I am your bitch.
Well, you've even got the weapon of choice there behind you. It goes to show how much it
Yes.
means to you.
Oh God, yeah. Oh no, and beyond that, oh, not only do I have this, incidentally, for people on Instagram, if you want a commission of this, it is Mad Props Armory on
Nice.
Instagram. A wonderful individual who actually made this from scratch. He had no reference. I commissioned him to do it. I told him watch the movie, um, and he made this beautiful replica. And Lynn, and I got it specifically for Lynn, who does an insane cosplay as Gabriel. Uh,
It is
so
fantastic.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I agree though. It just there's so much about it, like, and they keep the stuff that needs to stay hidden, just like they
Yeah.
do with Gabriel coming out of the back of I can't remember her name.
The back of Maddie's head,
Yeah. And like the
and
fact that where he's holding all of these people is in the freaking attic of the house.
yeah, or even, but just when the reveal happens, and now we're like, oh God, she's in a cell with a bunch of prisoners. One of them played by Zoe Bell, and another one a 70s soul sister in a leopard cat suit. Just
As is normal
all
on a Friday night, you know?
as is normal in Seattle on a Friday night, and
Absolutely.
and oh God, and then just seeing that, and then transpiring into a big old onslaught at a police station.
Oh man.
It was a symphony. And to me, for my money, it's like, I think that might have been the moment for me that James Wan, I was finally on board with James Wan. I mean, I respected him, but I was never on board with him. But when I saw that damn movie, I was like, okay, James Wan, you are a pint. You are a titan of the genre after that.
Oh,
But that is a prime example. That is a wait what that is so potent that so many people I know at the second that twist happened are so I've had people go, I'm out, I'm done, and they bail on the movie. But then there are other people who are like, it's kind of, and then like, oh God, and immediately then fall in love with it. That's one of those times where I live for the divisive attitudes people have had
oh yeah. And it
toward that
has been
movie.
so divisive in the way that people look at it. But you're right. I mean, the way, because you could sense that there was something not right. But in normal movies, it would have been, like the spirit of an unborn twin, or something in her
Yeah.
brain was controlling it, or whatever it might
Or
be. But this goes hardcore, like, being able to walk backwards and, fight like a
yeah.
motherfucker.
Exactly. That is pure Gonzo. That is pure Gonzo horror right there. And I just freaking live for it.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, it was my number one of 2021. It's like, and there was a lot of good horror that came out that year, but I had not seen anything like Malignant. So Yeah, gotta show our love for that. So your
Absolutely.
turn.
Well, I've got Fresh. It came out the next year, I think.
Yeah. Or
Not necessarily the same level of Gonzo and kind of wait what factors,
yeah,
but it does give you a very distinct, okay, rom-com that has some probably slightly creepy elements. All of a sudden, the girlfriend is tranked, title card comes up, and then you're off and running into Cannibal Land.
it's sad to me that I knew that this was a cannibal movie when I press play on it because one of my favorite types of horror is cannibal horror. I just have fun with that just because I
Oh yeah.
always love I'm always a big fan of the motivation of why someone does it.
Oh yeah.
You know, sometimes it's because of a dominance thing, sometimes it's like Motel Hell where they feel like they're doing a public service. But I love, and you're right, the major I kind of want to show someone this movie, like saying, "Oh, it's the romantic comedy of the year." You know, it's so great.
It's
And
fresh.
well, yeah, it is so fresh. And the first half hour of this movie sells it to you because Sebastian Stan and Daisy Edgar Jones are so charming and they have such great chemistry. And
Oh
the
yeah.
courtship, the whole courtship of that movie is so endearing and so adorable. And then she gets tranked, and then the title card drops, and then first scene afterwards, is her chained up, and he's like actually just laying it out. I'm gonna sell your meat. And even better, you think it's even better about Fresh is that it is that you have to look at the signs. I mean, the whole movie you could say is an exploration of gaslighting in a relationship because if you go back after you've seen the movie and you go back and you watch the courtship, there are signs all throughout, even to
Oh
the
yeah.
fact that when he first meets her, there's a little sign above her head that says fresh meat.
Hmm. It is well done, and it's kind of like we were talking about with Peter Jackson. Like there, everything that you see on screen is put there for a reason. It's not
Yeah,
nothing is put there by chance.
yeah. I mean, as far as in terms of Gonzo horror, this is definitely a much more subtle example, but there are little moments to this movie. I think because it's a movie that's actually having an active conversation about
Sure.
cannibalism and why people do it, and even to the full extent of why they're doing it, and even down to the fact that we have Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier, doing a very dorky dance sequence to Obsession while he's packing Hello Fresh boxes of human meat.
And I would even say the larger implications of the fact that it goes to like these, rich billionaires across the world, and kind of the dark cabal types. I think even
Yeah,
that aspect of it kind of plays into that too.
this one I would definitely say is one of the more subtler examples of Gonzo horror, but it's definitely one that goes from a nice little lull you into a false sense of security, but then it goes into such an extreme idea that I think it's a good sucker punch concept. So I do enjoy the wait what concept of Gonzo horror for the simple fact that this is the kind of movie because of the fun idea of showing people a movie like this and seeing the look on their face. I suppose you could say Sleepaway Camp falls under
Oh
this heading
yeah.
too.
Agreed.
I
I think
get
you definitely could. You get more
yeah.
out front what it is to some extent, but yeah, it's definitely the slow burn of wait for it, wait for it, wait for
Yeah.
it.
You see that? I mean, the wacky thing about that one, I would have said don't give a fuck on Sleepaway Camp, and this isn't my example. This is actually going to kind of lead into my example.
Okay.
Um, that's a movie that because it's made by a guy who's maybe not the best filmmaker of the bunch, and because all the ingredients, because the character interaction, that's a movie that you're so used to it being this type of melodramatic crazy ass movie. And for more on that, everybody just go to my commentary on Sleepaway Camp with my friend with Logan and Lynn. But
Absolutely.
it's when you get to that final twist, the infamous mangled dick.
Yes.
When you get to that twist, that's when the whole movie recontextualizes and becomes something so outrageous. And there's a reason it's one of the greatest endings of all time. But there was another slasher that came out and this is my example, that completely changes what kind of movie it is by at the dead end of the movie, and that was Juan Piquer Simone's Pieces.
Ooh. Excellent,
Yeah,
excellent movie.
yeah. I mean, if you
From the
Ugh.
perspective of what it does. Like it's
Yeah.
not, I mean it's a classic good bad. I mean
Oh
from
yeah.
my perspective. But no, absolutely. What it does in
Yeah.
those last couple of minutes is takes what you think is happening and then flips it.
Even then, it's funny because the final confrontation with the killer is actually remarkably anticlimactic. The killer just gets shot in the head. But then you see what he's been doing. Now, for those who are unaware, Pieces is about it's a slasher, and I will say this, content warning, this is a film this is kind of one of the films that it's hard to argue with the politicians when they say that this movie has no redeeming value. It is a sleazy as hell film. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
we will tell you that right then and there. But with that being said, it's also entertaining as hell. And one of the, I mean, apart from uh the actress with probably the best melodramatic read of bastard I've ever heard.
Bastard! Bastard! Bastard!
The real Gonzo aspect of this movie comes at the tail end because the killer is not just is he killing women on a college campus, he is dismembering the key parts of their body and stealing them, all for the sake of piecing together a woman, like his own woman. Why he's doing it, it's some childhood like urge. But the thing that made this movie completely Gonzo, um, is the tail end of the movie is that the main character is this kid who, well, you and I know him as the asshole musician from Pod People, but did you know that?
No, I didn't
He's the
actually.
he's the guy who goes,
It stinks.
God, that's him.
that's him. Yeah,
Oh my God. Holy shit.
yeah.
Oh, oh, oh,
I just
oh my God. He just and that's probably something I should have known, but I didn't make the connection. Oh my
yeah,
God.
that's it. Well, actually, Juan Piquer Simone directed Pod People.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of
So,
sense then.
all right. So I am so happy I got to tell you that. But
That's one
so
thing. Walking away for apologies, but every single time I do something with you, I come away with some amazing piece of like random information that blows my mind and makes me so happy. So thank you, John.
especially with that one, especially anything MST3K related. I'm glad I gave you that bit.
Yay.
But anyway, his character in Pieces is this Lothario who beds like every woman on campus, and they're gagging for it. There's one bit where he actually pulls out with a girl to peek outside to see what's going on, and he's hanging half mast in that scene. They actually show it. But anyway, yeah, he's someone who fucks around on with so many women. Actually, one of the victims goes to a pool in the hopes that he's going to join her. But at the tail end of the movie, this reanimated corpse, there is no motivation. There is no impetus behind it whatsoever. This corpse just all of a sudden, out of the blue, reaches out, grabs his crotch, and crushes it and mangles it. At the dead end of it, and there's no reason for it. There was no indication that this was a Frankenstein movie. There's no indication that this was some people have humorously said, oh, it's just the rage and the karma of a bunch of angry women that he nailed and bailed on, channeling through this corpse and getting their revenge on him. It's like, this is not the kind of movie, people.
But I think people will always, there's always that need to find reason. I mean, if you want to look at it from the perspective, that's why we get conspiracy theories on like everything, because people can't explain that. But I think looking at this movie, it can't just be, it has to be explained, you know?
Yeah. And and sometimes that's not the movie's intent. But then again, in the case of something like Pieces, I mean, Juan Piquer Simone is a exploitation filmmaker through and through. So a lot of times he'll do things just for the sake of doing it. I mean, it's definitely not like certain movies that we could throw into the don't give a fuck category that actually you kind of get the vibe are actually that they're going outrageous specifically to say something. So do you have any kind of, going back to don't give a fuck, do you have any movies that may fall underneath that heading?
I would say something like Mad God.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, you could definitely say overlap on that one between Don't Give a Fuck and I'm Uncomfortable, because they're shitting Mad God. That's definitely makes you feel like disgusted.
Oh yeah.
absolutely. But and that's a film. I don't know if you saw when Phil Tippett was on Joe Bob.
Mm-mm.
Uh,
I missed.
it's hard. It's hard to really interpret what his intention was with Mad God, but you definitely know that there's a motivation behind every single bit that's in it. So,
Oh, agreed.
uh,
Well, and I looked like I did a group watch on it, and I was the whole time we're sitting there going, "What the fuck? What the fuck? What the everlying fuck?"
yeah,
And so I went to Wikipedia and I was trying to like make sense of things, and I guess that kind of goes back to what we just said about pieces, where it's like, oh, it's the this corpse reaching out and crushing the guy's balls, or hundreds of women that have been like, hey, you took my pinky, you killed me for my pinky, I'm gonna rip you apart, you know. What, you couldn't grab both kidneys from one person, you had to take my only working kidney, you bastard.
I have never heard it referred to take my pinky ever. I am 42 years old and I've never heard it described like that ever.
Well, it got
I
me,
give
and
you
then
I
go
give
ahead.
you movie I give you MST3K movie trivia, you give me take my pinky.
Well, it got me thinking, like, because I just watched Lisa Frankenstein, and like, there's and I
Ah,
apologize, random tangent, like really random tangent, but like the one guy, not to, I guess we're in spoiler territory, but like one person has their hand taken, they're killed for their hand, or they're killed for an ear, and it's like you couldn't take the hand and the ear from the same person.
yeah. They didn't think of it at the time, but then
No,
at the tail end, and in this, and I was impressed. I loved Lisa Frankenstein, but in this PG-13 movie, at the tail end, a guy's
literally.
dick gets cut off, and we actually see the silhouette of the dick. And I was, oh God, I love Lisa Frankenstein. Everyone, if you have not seen Lisa Frankenstein yet, go see it. It's so good.
It is fun.
So,
And
oh
I didn't realize, and I'm sorry again, tangenting off, but like it someone had said, "Oh, it's like Heather's," and it's like I guess it kind of is. Like I
yeah,
hadn't thought about that. It has elements of that for sure.
yeah. Actually, now that you bring it up, there is a kind of Heather's edge to this movie. Very Heather's, very Mean Girls. Very solid edge to this movie. So yeah,
Yeah.
and you know what? It's not off brand for what we're talking about. That definitely would fall, definitely would conveniently land in the realm of Gonzo horror, especially when you take into account that it's kind of a portrayal of um, people who are social outcasts, and it's like it's like, what do they have to do in order to find companionship and love? And this is
Oh
just a character who goes to such a grand extreme in order to do it.
yeah. And the use of the tanning bed, I just like
Yeah,
going that route was fantastic. But
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, but in a way, I mean, it's funny how we go from Mad God to Lisa Frankenstein, but both of these are examples of filmmakers who are using a Gonzo aesthetic or a Gonzo tone or even just plot elements to say something, to actually
Mhm.
have like something to say about a particular topic. I mean, going back to Mad God, I mean, that to me, I think is a product of someone who is probably, now this is the fact that the major aspect of that movie that needs to be celebrated is the fact the movie was like 30 years in the making. That was
Oh
30
yeah.
years of Phil Tippett's life to make that sucker. But it's very clear that every single moment of that was, on one side, yeah, just him showing off his imagination, but simultaneously a lot of the key scenes in that movie seem to be him commenting on his, or basically kind of showing his attitude towards society, not just society, but even to religion,
Oh
to
yeah.
our existence, or what we represent in the grand scheme of the world. I mean, there's moments in the movie that are incredibly beautiful, but then immediately get interrupted by just utter horror
Right. It
as
is
well.
uncomfortable. There's so much, and I mean, I know that's the point, but like there's the scene where he's like they're basically doing like tearing the guy apart, eyes being ripped
Yeah.
out, all of that. Like even though it was a puppet and you're sitting there going, well, I know this is fake, it's just there is something so visceral about the way that it's done, and Phil
Mhm.
Tippett is such a master of the craft. It's just
Yeah.
incredible.
And I'm glad you brought up that scene in particular because yeah, I mean, it's you think he's just pulling out, innards, and they're like, no, he's pulling out material wealth, he's pulling out gold, he's pulling out jewels, he's pulling out, stuff that's like it's what, and that's weird. I mean, on the surface, you're like, that's odd, but you could say that's Phil Tippett basically saying like, we all seem to just kind of like fill ourselves with materialism. Like this seems to be the thing that we kind of define ourselves by. Even then, it's such an uncomfortable scene in general, just because you're watching someone basically get disemboweled, and even worse is that they're still alive when it's happening.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
all the stuff with the baby is so like even when they're in that beautiful garden, there's just
Mhm.
something so off kilter. Like it's like you're standing in a hallway that's slightly off kilter. Like you're knowing you can interpret what's in front of you, but there's so much that it doesn't make sense to your eyes. It doesn't, there's no way to connect all of it.
Yeah. Absolutely, but there was never any point for me when I was watching it that I thought this is just style for the sake of style. It's like there always felt like
Oh yeah.
I always felt like there was intention behind it. So definitely, yeah, Mad God's a great example of that. I mean, funny enough, I could have leaned it in don't give a fuck territory, but I feel like that's definitely falls under I'm uncomfortable, but it definitely feels like it has a sheer intention. One that has intention that I would and you brought this example to me, and I can't believe I didn't think about it. But definitely, and it's one that I know has been interpreted in so many ways. From Japan, Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Oh yeah. It's just
Yeah,
my God. How do you? It's such a. I mean, again, going to the production side, there's so much that you could just dig into on that particular aspect of it. Like meaning and stuff aside, the work that went into that was in itself gonzo. I mean, it's so much of it is I don't even know it. I mean, corkscrew
yeah,
penis aside, it's just a movie made from
yeah.
junk, basically.
Oh yeah, it is entirely made of a painstaking stop motion, lots of junk. I mean, there's a point in the movie where a cat gets merged with cans. There's yeah, a drill penis, and at the center of it, some people, I mean, yeah, the and I've even watched an interview with this director, and I couldn't even begin to fathom what his intent was behind it. But at the same time, though, it has been interpreted. Of course, on one side, it is about man's obsession with technology and how we are like so hell bent to become one with machines that we practically make it part of ourselves, part of our being.
Oh yeah.
Which at the time the movie came out, it the truth that Oz idea may not have been as prevalent, but nowadays, just with the fact that we're practically surgically attached to our phones, the fact that
Yeah.
we are here, doing all this stuff on podcasting and everything like that, I feel like that particular theme definitely becomes more relevant. Yeah, I'm sure the director probably felt that way, but there was also a little hint of the idea of like there's actually kind of a love story involved here where our main character is in a sick way kind of connecting with his tormentor, and like this guy's saying, I see it in you, I see this truth in you that you don't want to accept. And then the whole ending of the movie is our main character basically giving in to him and becoming one with him, kind of
Absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just does it with hyper stylized editing and freaking stomp style techno music, which that's I would love to go to a rave and hope one day someone just kind of plays that in the background, just plays the movie in the background, because I think it'd be perfect for that.
Oh, there's got to be at least one in the history of the movie where that showed up somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's me assuming, but I would not be surprised. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know if this falls into that same kind of category. Obviously, it's not as far out as Tietsu, but with something like House, would you consider that in
Yeah.
this realm?
In terms of that one, I
Like,
would. Well, that one, I think, in order to kind of categorize it, we got to think about the origin of that movie. I personally, I would put this under the don't give a fuck territory, principally because the director, when he was coming up with this, he just simply asked his teenage daughters all the things that none of his teenage daughter, but I think some of their friends, just what are the things you find scary? And they gave him like this laundry list of all these things, and he just wrote a script around that.
that makes a lot
In a
of
way,
sense.
yeah, he just wrote this movie that specifically, in a way, he kind of wrote it for a specific audience, I guess, for young girls, which is
Mhm.
why the heroines of the cast is all teenage girls who are
Yeah,
who are
yeah.
very obviously archetypal.
Yeah, just what was your first clue? I mean, one is actually called, isn't she actually called Brainy or something like that?
I think
Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
pretty.
one yeah, or I think it's called well, I know one's called Kung Fu,
Yep.
which I'm like, wait a minute, Kung Fu, isn't that wouldn't that be Chinese, I think, and karate would be Japanese? I don't know.
Ah,
But
semantics.
yeah, her name's Kung Fu. I think there's another one, I think oh God, I'd have to look that up. But yeah,
I think.
each one's always is named after their specific character trait. I mean, you got Mac, which is a diminutive of stomach,
Yep.
and who is dubiously fat. I'm like, they say like, oh, you eat everything, and you're like, oh, you're so pudgy. And I'm like, oh, looking at her, going, she looks fine. She looks perfectly healthy.
Oh, but yeah, that's I don't know. I got nothing in that particular
You got nothing.
arena. It's like,
This and yeah, that was kind of my reaction when I first saw it. I mean, this is the kind of movie where a girl gets eaten by a piano.
yeah. Then the one like her head like she picks up a watermelon and then her head gets taken off and oh god,
Yeah,
the random skeleton dancing always kills me. It's like, what?
ran.
Why is this random skeleton dancing?
Yeah, actually, to its credit, does not that movie tells you that this is going to be a wild ass movie. Just when the first scene with one, I think Fantasy, I think her name is,
Yeah, yep, yep.
with her father, and the set looks like an Alpine White Nestle ad, with the gorgeous sepia tone. With wind coming into the apartment, even though there's no indication of where the wind's coming from. Uh,
Someone had burritos on set.
oh God, oh Jesus, or they went a little crazy on the wasabi. Um,
Yeah. Back in the
yeah,
day they didn't they were pleasant smelling, it just modern day kind of changed
yeah,
that.
or
So
even or there's even the fact there's a whole montage of a guy gets his butt stuck in a bucket and against all odds is like falling down. In a way, it's kind of like what happened with Kane Hodder in Ghoulies 3. Uh, but yeah, that and what was it? Didn't he turn and he turns into a pile of bananas at the tail end of it?
yep.
If I suppose at this late time, I think we should just come up with our own like go ahead and give me some of your favorite examples of each category, like the ones that just like you live for that you have to watch like over and over again.
I mean, just generally, something like I don't give a fuck would be like Bad Taste, which we kind
Hmm.
of talked about Peter Jackson, but Bad
Yeah.
Taste was my first introduction to him, so that one always stands out a little bit more. Let's see. For Wait What? Society is just
Yeah. Oh,
incredibly
God.
like, oh my God, you know you're going into something funky because there was a lot of movies like that made at that point, but where it
There,
goes, you know.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I can't believe we didn't bring that up sooner. But yeah, that one, I knew that there was something off about that movie. I knew, and a lot of it's because Brian Usna directed it and Scream Mad George did the special effects on it. But and I cannot wait for my next party because I am so going to show that to people and not tell them what's in it. Uh,
You mad
be,
bastard.
because there are little moments that hint that there's something odd going on here. But even then, none of it prepares you for when you get to the shunting.
Oh, agreed, agreed. And I
Yeah.
mean, when I first watched this, and again, looking at it from a 30-year in the future lens, it gave like really strong like the Faculty kind of
Yeah.
vibes, like. And I was thinking, okay, though that seems like it's kind of the way that it's going, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're gonna go do that. Are you
Yeah.
sure? Okay, here we are.
And normally when you see a sequence like this, it's always like nightmarish. It's always like Cthulhu, like a Lovecraftian kind of thing. But in the end, no, it's just a big old flesh orgy. And you're seeing people just having a grand old time like doing it, or just you're hearing like orgasms in the background, and you're seeing like a bunch of people just having wine while they're blending in with this. It's such a whacked out sequence, and it's honestly to me, I think it's one of the greatest sequences in horror history, just because I'm dead positive no one who watched that movie for the first time was expecting to see something like that.
Oh no, absolutely not. And even seeing like from our perspective so many years on, you might have seen stills from the movie, but you don't have any context for them. So
Uh-huh.
knowing that that's going to happen, but not knowing where it's going to happen or what the context is of it, I think makes it more intriguing because you're thinking, okay, things aren't what they seem, but how far outside the norm are they from what we assume?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. And I definitely know for the few people I have shown it to is like after they walk away from it, they definitely feel like some have actually I've been told said they felt violated because
Oh
the
God.
movie just so you could definitely put society under I'm uncomfortable. I like to put it under wait, what? I mean, because there are some people who are not prepared for a movie where you have a whole bunch of people engaging. It's one thing to have an orgy scene, I mean, hell, Game of Thrones, Westworld
Yeah.
had scenes like that, but to see them go into this big old grotesque flesh pile, and even worse is the fact that the movie even has hints of incest involved with it as
Yeah.
well. I mean, that's just a level of depravity that I think a lot of people are just not prepared to witness.
Not even remotely. And the more you think about it, because, movies like this do make you think, both from the perspective of, okay, the rich are a different kind. Like you think royals, there's
Yeah.
incest in that kind of thing. Like these people believe that they're above a certain place. What is actually happening behind the doors? And my real question for society is just like it was for pieces, did someone walk away with the wrong pinky?
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, I think that's entirely possible. I mean the guy ended up walking away with a freaking mole that he didn't have before.
Doc, is it cancerous? No, but it belonged to someone half your age.
Oh yeah, I think a favorite of mine as well that now I know you've never heard of this film, and actually a lot of people haven't, but I discovered it on Shudder when it came up on Shudder last year. Uh, that really kind of blew my mind as to like broad expanse of what kind of movie it was. It's a film called The Manitou that starred Tony Curtis, and it
Nice.
involves Tony Curtis is really great in this film, but it's about a woman who develops a growth on her back. Now you think it's going to be like body horror or something like that, but and in her efforts to try to get it removed, when the doctor tries to put the scalpel to it, he ends up putting the scalpel to himself.
Ooh.
And that's how you think it starts. You think it's gonna be body horror, but then it gradually leans into spiritual, or you think it's gonna be a ghost story.
Mhm.
But then as Tony Curtis starts digging deeper to find out what's going on with it, he discovers that it's the remanifestation of an indigenous demon that is coming back onto our plane of existence through this growth on a woman's back. And he brings in a Native American mystic to I forget which particular tribe he's from, but he brings him in so they could try to combat this thing before it gets too strong. But by the end of the movie, an entire hospital floor gets frozen, and the hospital room that she's in becomes the cosmos.
Well, there's always that one hospital room that has to have that. I mean,
I mean, yeah, I know, but usually you get that's when you have just really good insurance. But
that is a good point. We're gonna serve you filet mignon through your IV. Do you want it
yeah,
rare or medium?
yeah, through your IV. I mean, now, I hope you don't mind. We have to wait because the space baby has been like beating on the door
Damn
kind of
space
thing.
baby. They're trying to sell me Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah. Hey, you answer the call to the Thin Mints.
That is true. And I will always answer the call to the Thin Mints. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Though I've had to resist. They've come out with some new flavors, which I'm like, oh God damn you. Damn you all.
come to the cosmic side. We've got cookies.
Yeah. So I suppose in this last leg, I think at this point we should just try, throw out a whole bunch of examples for other people to kind of add to their shopping list for this. I mean, we've definitely gotten some. So for some other ones that I think we haven't mentioned, especially in the wait, what category? I mean, waxwork would definitely be that.
Oh yeah.
One I actually forgot to mention to you, Beyond the Door 3.
Oh, good
Uh,
choice.
yeah, that one has trains going off literally going off the rails, but then getting back on the rails. It has the whole thing being resolved by her losing her virginity to a fallen angel. I mean
Yeah.
that, yeah.
That's like a Wednesday affair, though. I mean, how many times? I mean, I've lost my virginity to a fallen angel at least 4 times already.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm not gonna get into when I lost mine, but I would definitely say the one I lost it to was definitely a fallen angel.
Oh,
Um, yeah.
okay.
I'll leave it to you all to interpret what I mean by that. Uh, I would even say another one I'd fall underneath the wait what category would be Ruben Galindo Jr.'s Don't Panic.
Oh, yeah.
aka the movie with the boy or the boy with the dinosaur pajamas.
Are we calling him a boy, really? He's probably like 27.
You know what? He's very clearly having a crisis because he spends most of the movie wearing the kind of dinosaur pajamas that Kevin McAllister said his friend got nailed for wearing.
Yeah. And here's the question: is his version of a like quarter life crisis wearing like so he wears dinosaur pajamas in the way that other people like go out and buy a sports car?
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Or maybe like the high school kid who's desperately trying to stay relevant by being a brony.
You know, yeah,
You know, something like that. Yeah.
that makes sense. Different strokes for different folks.
That to me is one I strongly recommend watching just because of the sheer level of what, and I think the wait what element of that one is just more like what was the director's decision making process. Like the costume designer submits to him that this 19-year-old kid with a mullet, with a blonde mullet, blonde curly permed mullet, the fact the costume designer says, "Oh, he's got to wear these dinosaur pajamas," and it's like, and the fact that the director said, "Yo, man, that's genius. Let's run with it."
I would even say that of the opening Ouija board session was kind of that it had elements of that just in the way
Yeah.
that they went about it. So,
So, I mean, what are some other ones that you should have people that you recommend for people to look out for in that category, or just yeah?
just generally, let's see, something like City of the Dead, maybe, just because that one it
Yeah.
starts out as normal as a giallo can, but then it just kind of goes and goes, and all of a sudden someone is puking out their whole endocrine system.
Oh, you mean City of the Living Dead?
Oh yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh,
City of
you're
the
talking
Living
about,
Dead.
yeah.
Sorry about
I
that.
was about to
Yeah.
say City. Yeah, City of the Dead is the one with Christopher Lee.
Oh God, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay. City of the Living Dead. Yeah, that one, in Fulci terms, that's definitely one that escalates in ways that definitely the movie did not resemble that at the dead beginning. And that's a Fulci film, so that's saying something. I'm kind of wanting to put this more in the don't give a fuck territory, but I'd say actually this will be a transition. Slumber Party Massacre 2
Oh yeah.
definitely would fall underneath any of these heading. That would definitely fall under Gonzo Horror, but I've already talked at length about that particular movie. In fact, for everyone, go to our podcast episode with me and Tally when we went through the Slumber Party Massacre franchise on that. But that definitely falls under. That's definitely Gonzo Horror. I would have said put it under wait what, but I think now I'm putting it more don't give a fuck territory. So we might as well lean into that. Actually, one that we have a fond reverence for because you and I collabed on this, Lair of the White Worm.
Oh God, that's so great. Such an awesome movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not just because of Peter Capaldi's legs. I mean,
Oh.
keep it under control. Oh
Oh.
God, Jesus. Do you need a minute? Should I
Maybe.
go get popcorn and let you do your thing?
Hold on. It's just gonna. I gotta do some paperwork before it's deposited in my spank bank. Okay. All right. Just don't mention the bagpipes. Oh God, I mentioned the bagpipes.
Oh, don't
Ah.
mention the kilt. Oh, damn it. I did
Oh
that
God
too.
damn it.
Don't mention
Don't think of
the hair.
elephants. Oh wait a minute, I just thought of elephants.
Margaret Thatcher naked on a cold day.
Cold
Margaret
day.
Thatcher naked,
Thatcher naked on a cold day. Okay.
You good?
All right.
All right.
It's
need-
deposited. It's deposited, and I made sure I'm going to get interest.
Do you
All
do you
right.
need a cigarette? I can run quick and grab you something.
No,
real
no,
quick.
no, no, no. No. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
Not to go back, but one other one that kind of fits that realm is, and it's kind of more sci-fi than horror, but I would argue that there's a lot of horror elements, would be Event Horizon. It kind of starts off as you know that it's going to be space horror of some sort, but it kind of goes in ways I don't think that I realized it was going to go personally.
Well, it ended up becoming, well, usually when you think sci-fi horror, you think you think just alien menace. You think it's going to be like something, a menace from the stars. You don't expect that it's going to turn into Doom, basically.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, like Doom by way of The Exorcist, where it ends up becoming like a gateway into hell, and all of a sudden you're seeing uh demonic imagery thrown
Agreed.
in.
Agreed.
Yeah. So that,
Which,
yeah, I feel bad. I still have yet. You know what? There's a little part of me. I think the reason why I haven't watched it is because I'm holding out hope that one day all that lost footage will be
oh man.
found and that they can cut it back into the movie, because I know, and I feel bad for Paul W.S. Anderson, because I feel like if he got a chance to have that movie shown the way he wanted to, I think his whole career trajectory would have completely changed by that point.
Oh, agreed. Agreed.
But
And
with
I
that
guess
being,
you're gonna
yeah.
always have those moments where those weird turns, but yeah, no, absolutely, it could have made a massive
Yeah.
difference for him. So,
Absolutely. I mean, and a lot of times, Gonzo horror elements does just come from just simple genre bending, that, because, we commonly associate something with one type of thing, but then it becomes but then you throw in another element and the movie becomes this big old glorious cake.
oh yeah.
Like a film I love out of China is a film called The Seventh Curse, which, has, in a way, it kind of feels like one of those like those old 1940s serials, the kind of stuff that Indiana Jones was kind of inspired by. But then you throw in cult horror elements, and then demonic possession, and then you throw in like blood sacrifice elements to it, and then you throw in martial arts, and then the movie just becomes absolute like insanity all the way through. And then you throw in Chow Yun Fat as a professor character, who just happens to also be really, really good at martial arts as well. And then you got this whole big old cake that is just glorious to behold. And I kind of just love movies that just throw in everything but the kitchen sink, specifically just because that's kind of what they want to see.
Oh, 100%. And
You know, I,
those movies, they're hard. And again, it's kind of like with Freaked, it's that balance of
yeah,
all of those things to get where you need to do it to do it successfully.
yeah. I mean, that's the stuff that makes movies like Blood Diner or The Toxic Avenger, or even House of a Thousand Corpses, or these are kind of movies where they just throw, or even Toby Hooper with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2,
Yeah.
where he just wanted to do it the way he wanted to do it, because he knew damn well that he was never going to make the same movie. He was never going to make a film on a par with the original. And he knew that he was going to have to make this movie even if he didn't want to. So he said, fuck it. It's going to be a big old comedy. I'm going to throw in everything I want in it,
Hell yeah. Including the kitchen sink.
including the kitchen sink. And sometimes I would say it's even to a bit to its detriment. I mean, actually, you brought this one to the table. You brought Mandy to the table.
Oh yeah, yeah. That I hadn't watched it, like I just watched it here for the first time, and I feel bad I waited so long to watch it, kind of like you did
Yeah.
with Fresh, was it Fresh?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Fresh, yeah. I mean,
Like a lot of what it was already kind of out there and stuff, and you see all those iconic scenes and you kind of expect them. It's like seeing too much in a trailer, but it went batshit, but then it's like it's already been there and back again, and you're kind of like, I don't
yeah.
know.
I think, yeah, one of my big horror, and I'm probably going to save it for another thing when we talk about horror hot takes with, but I will say I was never 100% enamored with the film, but I can never deny that very clearly Panos Cosmatos just wanted a movie with all this whack, crazy shit in it. And you know what? I'm glad you got what you wanted, dude. Whether or not I
Absolutely.
made it. Yeah, and I know a lot of people love Mandy, so I will not take that away from them. I mean, that's definitely a prime example of a Gonzo movie that just, I guess, I think the reason why that movie worked for so many people is that it's a Gonzo movie that ticked the boxes of the kind of stuff that a lot of audiences wanted to see,
Yeah.
or just the stuff they like to see. Even down to Nicolas Cage not wearing his pants, freaking out.
That was probably, I feel like they just said, okay, go to town, enjoy yourself, go crazy. And he took those marching orders literally and just
Yeah,
did the thing. So,
yeah. I mean, but then, yeah. See, for me myself, I mean, I kind of like, if you had to give me a movie that, like, where it's all about ticking boxes with just kind of maniacal glee. I mean, you can't go do better than the House of Trauma, and then of course you
oh
got
God,
Toxic
yeah.
Avenger, where that's the kind of studio that says, you know what, you want a movie called Rabid Grannies? Here's a movie called Rabbit Grannies. You want the killer condom? We got the killer condom. You want to start the
Oh.
Kabuki Man? We got it.
Just don't do Killer Kabuki. Just don't do Kabuki Man in, Toxic Avenger 4, because you're gonna get not the same thing as what you get in the original Kabuki Man.
Exactly. And I'm a big fan of that mentality. And there's a little part of me just loves the mentality of fuck it, we're gonna do it. I mean, that's how you get movies like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and The
True.
Mean One. I know you haven't seen it, but the first Winnie the Pooh, I wanted to love it. But with that being said, it's not going to stop me from going to see the second one when it comes out because, and I think that's actually something we could touch on as kind of like a nice wrap up for all this, is that even if a movie, we know that it may not be a great movie, would you say that Gonzo Horror has a bit of an allure where we just have to see it to believe it?
Oh, it's total car crash. I mean, it's you driving by any kind of crazy event and you can't help but look. You rubberneck because that is in our nature to do it. And I think whether you catch it off, without meaning to, or whether you go in fully knowing that whatever you're about to watch is gonna make you uncomfortable or change your perspective or make you go, what the ever loving fucking fuck did I just fucking watch?
Yeah.
We go in for those shock value things, however they fall.
Yeah. I think all of us, as we go through our lives, we think, especially as you get older, you do think you've seen everything. You do think that there's nothing more new that life couldn't possibly show us. But then someone comes along and says, oh, by the way, the guy who directed Spider-Man did this movie where a guy beats the shit out of himself with his own hand and cuts it off and then replaces it with a chainsaw. And then all of a sudden your mind is blown that it's like, how did I miss this? What is this? And then you just lose your mind knowing that this exists in the world. And it kind of makes you feel electrified because you're like, wait a minute, if this has been in the world for so long and I didn't know about it, imagine what else is out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you talked about Peter Jackson earlier and how like people that were used to say heavenly creatures, Lord of the Rings, Kong, whatever modern stuff that he's done. Then you go back and look at anything that he did pre-Frighteners. And it's just like, how are these two people the same people?
Yeah. And a lot of it is because sometimes people just a director just wants to make a movie with the stuff that they want to see in a movie, and they'll just write a script around it. I mean, that's the way Jackie Kong does a movie where the corpse of a Lumerian goddess with a vaginal teeth stomach.
It is that need. I mean, with anyone who goes to the movies, I don't know one single person that sticks to just horror or just romantic comedies. That variety is what makes you think outside the box and keeps you going back to the theater, keeps taking you back to streaming. And that's these outside the box concepts, whether they be very kind of mainstream but with a twist, or something like, that's out of total left field, fueled by an acid trip. Those things are needed. You need cinema, not all cinema, but cinema should have the ability to surprise you and to make you think, because just as many of the movies that we've talked about leave you thinking about things in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, for all those cynics out there who keep making the erroneous claim that there's nothing new or fascinating or like original out there, it's like, you got to look for it, people.
You do. You absolutely
It's all out there. We have just literally given you all a veritable laundry list of all these great examples of movies that went for it and gauged reaction in one form or another. And you gotta reach out for it. You gotta look for it, and you gotta be willing to go to take the ride. A lot of times it may not be the type of movie that you're used to doing. It may not be the kind of movie you're comfortable with, but you gotta be willing to take the ride, because that's the only way you're gonna see something that you definitely know you've never seen before.
Oh, agreed. That whole argument, and not to get on soapbox, but it drives me nuts because yes, like the thing with The Crow, that in itself is an entire conversation. Whether that should have been made or not is not what I mean by saying this. But they're like, oh, remakes, that's all they do, But did you look outside of theaters? Like, yes, a lot of this stuff should be in theaters, but that's not the society that we're in right now. It is streaming. It is Netflix and Prime and whatever else is Shudder. Thank God for Shudder and Screambox.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
yeah, but it is looking and taking a chance. The same way you would have, 20 years ago walking into a video store and like looking at a title and going, well, this is a weird piece of shit. I think I'm going to try it. That
Yeah,
those things haven't changed.
that's
It's looking outside the algorithm and just trying something new.
precisely it. And the I think one of the things I feel so blessed having since becoming a horror fan was the idea that because I was willing to be that level of adventurous, it made me more willing to jump on other stuff
Yeah.
just for the sake of trying it. I mean, that's how recently I enjoyed a movie that was basically Mr. Nanny, except with satanic cults, with
Nice.
the movie Here for Blood that's on
Nice.
Screenbox right now. So that there's a world out there. You just got to be willing to embrace the madness and the absurdity. And honestly, Gonzo Horror, I think, is one of the most essential. Honestly, I would even say it's a gateway for a lot of people to watch more horror, because some of the crazy concepts in there are going to be things that you have been saying you want. So just go get it.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely. And that's a great place to kind of wrap it.
yeah,
It's like ordering something at a restaurant. If you order chicken tenders and fries at every single restaurant you go to, you're going to piss and moan about the fact that you don't try anything new at a restaurant. But if you step outside your box and try, a quesadilla or, I don't know, fish and chips or,
yeah.
you start small. You start with
Hmm.
simple things that are outside your box and you grow and change and you go,
Exactly.
"Oh my God, I found this director. I loved this piece. I'm going to go try that piece."
Yeah, precisely. I can't think of anything more. I think we've kind of hit the nail home. So
Absolutely.
for to wrap up, go ahead and tell us where we can find you, all your socials.
Cheers. You can find me most of the time on YouTube. I have a theater there called Trivial Theater. I do random, obscure, and straight up bad movies. Always something up new on the chopping block. I've done a lot of awesome stuff with John, who is a fantastic collaborator. He's one of my
Eee.
favorite guys in this space. So I guess beyond that, I'm on Twitter at Trivial Theater and Instagram also at Trivial Theater. So
Excellent. And for everyone else, just stay tuned. All of our connections are on there in the closing thing. But also definitely please everyone leave feedback, leave all the good juicy stuff to tell Spotify, hey, this guy's worth a lot more. Get that algorithm working for him.
absolutely.
But in the meantime, for everybody, if you are interested in delving into the dark recesses of human imagination, ask yourself this simple question: what's in the podcast?